All right, let's pick up where we left off. So, ooh, there we are. What am I gonna do? How am I gonna deal with stuff? Like, well, let's just go at it. All right, so yeah, I want to have that color on there. Boop 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 boop. You know, because I haven't fully decided which colors I'm gonna like. I got to get a bunch of colors down, and because of that, I don't want to spend too long trying to make perfect shapes for those colors. Like I just want them on the canvas right now because later I'll be using an eyedropper and I just want to work fast right now. Oh, I need to turn off my my brush opacity control. I just wanted at like 100%. I want to blast those colors out fast. Need to get a bit of moss up there. Boop, boop. Like yes, I want the green. And I'm trying to make these areas which are all brown, like let's dirt that up, make that darker. Or not darker, make that more red. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. Just trying to get rid of that blank white paper. Trying to get a stone in there. Like when I look at this thing here, right, that edge really getting lost. Like all I can see is shading, but I don't understand the shape. So it's like sometimes you have to look at it carefully to don't just copy color all the time. Sometimes it's like I have to sit there and try and figure out what it is I'm looking at. Okay, that's good. A lot of this is really plunging into shadow. So these areas here are getting darker. This is really just this it's like I can hardly even call this painting. This is like just hatching. Almost like a color pencil render, I guess. Ooh, that's too bright. I can tell. But this is the wonderful thing with like hatching like this is that you don't I don't have to spend too many trips to the I don't have to make many trips to the color palette. I can just, reach up, grab a color and then based on the strength of the hatch, I can kind of fade that. Like I don't have to use an airbrush. You can, you can use soft brushes, but I find that this is, I don't know, I like this more. It makes the drawing more colorful as opposed to muddy. It's like you can get blending and you can get more colors. The thing is, if you rely too much on opacity, like if you rely too much on transparency of brush as well as using the pressure of your brush to do the blending, doing it this way, because I'm not relying on brush pressure, it means I'm still getting blending because I'm using hatching to perform the blend. But it also means that the colors don't blend into an average. If they turn into an average, you're actually kind of reducing the colors because it's just, the colors are just smoothing and blending and turning into the same damn color. And then I like painting this way because, it's still drawing. Like this sort of hatching, it still pays attention to surface form. So it's like, I feel like this is the best of both worlds. This is how I would paint. I'm not saying it's the way to paint, but I'm saying this is the way I was meant to paint. Because it allows me to leverage the skills I already have. It's still drawing. It still uses line. In fact, here, like when I'm talking about things like blending, right, is that you can get blending using brush opacity. So let's say I was to blend this red with something that's opposite, like this blue, right? So if I kind of lightly brush this red and this blue, right, you get this kind of a nasty gray, right? Like that's what happens. It's just blending like that. On the other hand, if I were to turn off my brush pressure and I, throw that down, then I get the blue, and I blend it this way, right? Like the colors I get is a combination of bright blue, bright red, bright blue, bright red. You zoom out though, right? They look kind of similar, but this one still looks more vibrant. Right? I can blend all these different colors. Crazy colors even. Right? But if I were to do that using brush opacity, you see what I mean? It's like you don't, eventually it all kind of smears over. You lose those colors as you paint, and you get banding, and it's harder to control. Right? This gets all smudgy and smeary. This, on the other hand, sparkles. That's why I choose to use a hatching technique instead. Here we are. And then there's a directionality. Right? I get a bit of directionality in my hatch. And if I want some of this light to bounce up, I can bounce that light up that way. I think that was a little too bright. And if it's too bright, I can either use a narrower brush or I can just bring that color down. That's better. And then based on the frequency of the brush stroke. Right, so doing it this way means you don't have to have the exact color you need. You just hatch more or less. Like I could grab that white. And I could just dot it in even. It doesn't have to be a complete line. Like there's so much control you get when you use a hatch technique. And then the cool thing about using the other thing that's nice about using a hatch technique is it's less dependent on the perfect brush. Like you don't have to worry about getting the perfect brush stroke and the perfect brush shape. And you are working with a smaller brush though, so it does maybe take a bit longer to get the shape down. But I need to reshape that piece there. trying to get that bright. Like I want the top edge of these little stair steps to be brighter, and then I want the forward facing stuff to be darker. And another thing about not having to use brush pressure means you don't got to push really hard on the tablet. You never have to, like, I'm using extremely little brush pressure. I only need to put in enough brush pressure, enough stylus pressure to make the tablet pick up the fact that I'm actually putting, it's actually touching the tablet. That's it. So, and I know some artists who've they get carpal tunnel. They suffer from a lot of repetitive strain injury because they've been pushing so freaking hard on their tablets to try and get those dark strokes, and then they have to take time off because they've injured themselves. I still want to fade this a bit more. And let me tell you, I mean, sometimes like it seems that these people, like these injuries are serious. Like, they take you out for a month or more. It becomes a chronic injury you have to deal with. So I just say, you got to watch out for this stuff. Don't. Like it's really, and the thing is that a lot of these people, like this stuff just works into their habits. It's a bad fucking habit, like chain smoking or really, it's a damn shame. People with a lot of skill that I see, and they don't have their brushes set up right. They don't have their tablet set up right for the pressure, and they work in these terrible habits of applying excessive pressure to their stylus, and their stylus is all the tip's all worn out. Like I'm still using the same factory tip. This thing is like brand new still. Doesn't have all that battle damage on it. I don't get it. Well, I kind of do. It's because the default settings on the Wacom are terrible. I use that lighter edge to get some, light to bounce up. Light's bouncing off the surface and it's underlighting this. And then we got a little bit of light from above, the environmental skylight coming from above and hitting these things. Just tuning that down a bit. Oh, I gotta tune that down a bit as well. It becomes less obvious down here. And then it seems there's a bit of ambient occlusion, a little bit of SSAO. A bit of crevice shading. And then these areas here, I guess I can get rid of. Some of that. And we got a little bit of reflected light on this. So I'm just looking at this pattern. 1, 2. Oh God, it's so hard to see. I have to zoom in on that thing. I'm just staring really carefully. I see. Oh God, it's so fucking tiny too. I think it's like maybe 5. Oh God. So I've drawn this pattern way too fine. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, no, it's about right. Okay. I'm just going to make sure I use a more consistent brush stroke. Okay. It's like, yeah, I could use text, a texture and stretch it over, but I'm like, no, I'm gonna draw. I'm gonna stubbornly draw it. I'm just erasing away the gradient on the outside edge. Maybe a little too contrasty. I need to. Okay, so now I'm going to turn on the brush blending, right? And then I'll. Like, there's a time and a place for brush blending. And this is specifically this moment where it's like, okay, I need to perform a color adjustment. Okay, and then I can turn that brush blending off. We're back to 100% strength again on the brush opacity. Make that a little bit brighter. the reason why I put so much more effort in these areas is because this thing's sitting in the foreground. It's a rigid object, and it is a center. It's like central to the attention, whereas other stuff in the background is, well, in the background, we're not going to pay much attention to it. So in those situations, I can afford to be sloppy. But since this thing is so, kind of front and center, I can't afford to be sloppy on this one. And it's also why I'm, it's like, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it's like a small part of the whole painting, but it's like, this thing is the focus. This thing is important, mucho important. So to me, being efficient doesn't just mean straight up being lazy. It means, as much as I like to save energy and be smooth brain on things, is like it also means you have to recognize when you can't get away with something, and you really, you really got to bust ass on the thing. So it's not just knowing how to be lazy and knowing when you can save energy. It's also knowing when you can, really apply the maximum effect of your ability on a thing that people will notice. Like spraying a ton of ability on a thing that if you're putting in a lot of effort on a thing that nobody notices or cares about, and it has no effect, no detectable effect, even in the most subconscious sense, that's just dumb, right? Like that's just going to leave you tired and bitter. But what I do enjoy is putting a lot of effort into a thing and then being appreciated for that, having my effort appreciated. But I just say that the way the world works, this is just how the world works, is that there's a lot of effort that just goes underappreciated, and it's very disillusioning. But it doesn't mean that people don't appreciate effort. It's just they won't notice it if it doesn't, if it's not applied in the right places. Like, don't waste effort on things that people don't appreciate. And it's also easy to sometimes fall into a thing where it's like the things that you appreciate aren't necessarily going to be the things that other people appreciate. So, which is also maybe one of the reasons why I like to paint, right? It's like I paint as opposed to having somebody else paint for me or an AI paint, because it's like there are things that I appreciate that other people don't, and an AI won't. And the AI won't put those things into my drawings either, because they're not in the data set, because the data sets come from, guess where the data sets come from? They come from other artists, right? It comes from all that stolen art out there. So, I appreciate certain things that other people just never appreciated. So they never painted it. And it will never be in those data sets until I roll up my sleeves and fucking paint it into existence. one of the reasons why a lot of AI art, it looks very polished, but it's also starting to look kind of the same, right? Because all those AI bros are basically just copying the stuff. They're copying. They're all copying the same, art station trending. They find the few most popular artists and they just rip off from that. And that's, I don't have anything against the most popular artists except for the fact that they don't like the same things I like, and they won't necessarily like the same things that you like. They won't put the same emphasis on those things. Only you know what you like. Only you are going to care about the stuff you like. It's also why it's important to spend some time away from all the Instagram crap, because all it does is it just exposes you to stuff that other people like. If you don't spend any time with yourself, you won't get to be yourself. It's kind of cool. I'm just like, oh wow, I like how that's turning out. Yeah, like the shade is looking really good, and that's the thing. It's funny. I'm using a brush that has no blending to get blending, and you get really good control over that blend, like just stupid good control. And I don't. You're probably, at this point, there's probably not much for me to show you that. There's not much for you to learn here. Like, I just keep using the same technique over and over and over again. Like, I found basically this is what it means to have the basics. When you have the basic fundamentals, is like these are the bread and butter tools. These are the tools that you don't leave home without, and you just spam them again over and over and over again, right? These are like, I'm a hard brush main. That's all I am. I'm a hard brush hatch main. This is my basic fucking skill. And then sometimes, like, my alt is basically being able to get into like a really detailed area and blast it, right? I can really get into these little areas, and I can carve out lots and lots of little fine details that are very, very defined, right? And it takes a lot out of me. Eventually that skill goes on cooldown for a while and I need to take a fucking break. But that would be my alt. And I save that alt for when it's important. Right? There's certain areas like here, it's like, it's kind of getting all not very well defined. Not really particularly fond of that zone. sometimes you realize I've slipped up on that area and I need to carve it out a little bit more. What I do like is that like there's certain points where when I look at it, it's like, oh, it's starting to feel photorealistic due to the sheer amount of detail and or like what the rendering is just so well matched that it starts to feel photorealistic. Same thing like when I look at the little area of the koi, it's like these little areas that pop. And then there's other areas where if I look at like those zones, it starts to feel kind of like it's partially rendered, but it feels kind of it feels kind of Ghibli. I don't know how else to put it. It starts to feel a little whimsical and kind of just a little bit Ghibli. Stylized, I guess is the term. I can put in a few ripples. I don't feel the need to turn the whole freaking thing blue. Ah, okay. And I don't like I pay attention to every single ripple that I draw. Or every single shape that I put in there. And I think to myself, okay, hang on, I might need to get some reflection in here. I'll just use multiply mode. I know. You notice how much I zoom it out. The reason why I zoom it out is because like this much is because I'm looking at it in the same way that somebody would look at it as like a shitty thumbnail on a phone. All right. Now the thing about the shitty thumbnail on the phone is that art lives and dies by the fucking thumbnails. It means that if your thumbnail doesn't look good, no one will click on your art and zoom it up. Like they won't see it at full res. They'll only look at it if the thumbnail's good. So I zoom out and I crunch the thing down to the thumbnail, and you're like, oh, my detail. And it's like, that's because people don't give a shit about your detail when they're scrolling by on the fucking phone on Instagram. And I'm just, that's after you've been crushed online a few times, then maybe you start to realize just how important that detail is. And this is, it's like I try to make it look good from this far away distance. Whoops, not like that. We'll do it as a lighten mode. I'm just trying to lighten up these surfaces a bit. Maybe put it into darken mode as well. Too blue. All right, there we are. This is how I deal with these like bright white zones. I just put the brush in darken only mode. And I can put it into lighten only mode as well. So just let's trying to get that surface form to come out. I can even go into colorize mode. Well, I wanted to have some bushy bush. I can start figuring out just how much color I want to throw on there. Right? You make it really gaudy. I'm not going to go and try and make everything the same color. I'm just picking out a few bushes to make, one color. Then I'll change and I'll pick out a few other bushes and make those another color. Switch colors again. And of course, the values haven't been established yet. But, I know that a lot of schools of thought, they always say, oh, you have to work on all the values first. The values are the most important thing. Yeah, you're right. The value is important, but if you use the colorized brush, you can actually go in and you can apply some you can get some color in there early because this doesn't change the value yet. And also I got to figure out what I'm going to do with this zone. Like this area is going to be really tricky. I can put it in like darken mode. So in darken mode, I can do that, right? Like I can. Whoops. Okay. Yeah, I'm getting that kind of sky reflection in there to lighten up that area, that zone here, too, so we can get our strong silhouette. Because originally I had a lot of bright stuff in there, so I'm using the sky reflection as the shape to fill in there. Crazy, like crazy magic. The reason why I think it's like crazy magic is because I'm just drawing these shapes and they're starting to add together. It's like, oh, it's actually starting to look like water after a while. They're just these silly little color chips. I think it's funny how I'm so easily fooled by this stuff. It's a shitty old Jedi mind trick, and it's funny. It's funny when you can when I catch myself actually. It's oh shit, it's working on me. Oh my god, my smooth brain. It's working on my smooth brain. Amazing. Okay, that one didn't play out so well. Oh my god, it's been an hour already. Oh man, no, I should get back to programming. I still have to solve this mouse cursor screen resolution mapping issue. Okay. No, I should call it here. There we are. We threw another hour into it. Let's save what we got here. Computer, end recording.